Hey guys, what is up? Kid here with Burn One with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you a new deck profile. We've made it to Omens Eternal, and the first deck we'll be looking at is Midrange Forest. This deck aims to still win out the game, usually using King Elephant or Silverbolt, but the game plan isn't as aggressive. It's more about controlling the board until you get to the position to just kind of OTK your opponent or overwhelm your opponent with your field presence. So let's just get right into the deck itself. All right, so here's the deck itself. It's kind of still the same game plan of King Elephant is our major win condition along with Silverbolt, though I think now Silverbolt might be a little bit more of a risky play, but because you are playing Forest, you have ways to remove the Angel if your opponent decides to run that card that makes it so they don't take effect damage. So you have ways to deal with that, but other than that, the deck still kind of runs the same, but we're looking to control the field more than actually getting in pot shots early to make a King Elephant on 6 really close out the game for us. So we'll just get into this here. We're playing Bellringer. Forest doesn't always have the best wards, but Bellringer Angel still plays into the same game plan for King Elephant, having a large hand size along with Silverbolt. It's still one drop we can play on one, bounce if need be, and so forth. It's just such a solid card. Obviously, if we're playing Bellringer Angel, we're still playing one of the Evo because it still acts as a removal and a way to slow down our opponent and get another draw, obviously. Elfchild May, if you've been playing Forest for quite a while, you know the power of this card and how annoying this card can be for field-based strategies. And because our strategy is to dominate the field and to lead into our King Elephant and Silverbolt turns, Elfchild May is here and it's going to be around for quite a while. It's a great combo enabler too that slowly picks off followers on the board. Great card. You always want to see this in any matchups like against Sword and stuff like that early on, so you can start picking away at their board. Nature's Guidance, once again, we are working our way through comboing, drawing cards, bouncing back Elfchild Maze, bouncing back anything to reuse. It's just such a great card, consistent tool. It's super amazing. Harvest Festival, once again as well. We love drawing cards. We want a big hand size, another enabler for a lot of our bounce tools. Just really good card overall. If you've been playing Forest for a while, you know how powerful it is. Ancient Elf, still around, such a powerful card. It's a 2-drop that can eventually become a 5/5 ward, and like comboing with other pieces to bounce stuff back is always very good. Bouncing a Harvest Festival, drawing a card, making this a 3/3, replaying Harvest Festival, evoing Ancient Elf, bouncing it back, drawing another card, and making a 5/5 ward is obnoxious. It's just such a strong tempo tool to control the board. If we get one out early, we can either pressure our opponent or block a lot of damage that way. Because we're more back into the mid-range strategy leading into our King Elephant Silverbolt turns, we are back on Lily here. Lily's still such a powerful card. It's one of our tools to remove anything that's standing we just do not want to deal with early on. Just playing this out on 2 as well doesn't feel the worst because we can pressure our opponent, meaning that if they don't deal with this, we can always just Evo this next turn to bottom deck their card. We do play 2 of the Evo as well. Obviously, we have to play some number of Evos. We don't have a lot of really good hits, obviously, for the fanfare effect, but the card itself is still a very, very powerful card. Along with Tia. Tia being in the deck too gives us something to hit off of Lily on 2 if we hit it. Tia here, because we're playing that more board strategy and also controlling the board, being able to build wide boards is really important for us. And getting the combo 3 is pretty easy. If you've been playing Forest for quite a while, you know combo 3 is a pretty natural thing that happens at every game, essentially, or almost every turning even. So Tia building a wide board for us is always going to be really good. We play 3 of it because we just want to keep building wide boards when possible to pressure our opponent, having to answer the board, because if they don't answer the board, they will eventually just take big chunks of damage, meaning that we can actually close out the game with the clean Silverbolt or King Elephant on 6 even. Crystal Tia, only one of the Evo. I'm kind of iffy on this. I kind of almost want to, and I kind of don't also like Silent Suzuka personally too often, but it's still a very powerful tool for the deck. So right now I'm still kind of testing out the Silent Suzuka, though I might end up cutting it for some other things, and then maybe bumping up Tia to a 2 of Evo. Tia is still very powerful. The fact we get the Evo turning our 4/4 into a 5/5 with Rush is really, really powerful. Another new all-star, Fena here. This card goes hard. It's statted aggressively. It does 2 things here because we're kind of controlling the board. If we go first, that means on 2, after they play their first 1-drop, we can just go ahead and drop Fena, removing their 1-drop. Otherwise, if need be in some matchups we need to find like an Elfchild May or even a Bellringer Angel early, we can use that secondary effect to find one of our 1-drop followers there, which is really important in some matches up like Sword, like I was saying. Flower Doll is another new addition. I think I might have rated this a little bit lower than I probably should have in our set review, but this card actually is really powerful for 2 things here, which I'm like very surprised I didn't realize this completely when evaluating this card. But it can control the board very well without losing card advantage, because the Evo side of it lets you bring back a puppetry follower from your graveyard, including this card itself, the base form. So you don't go down on cards ever, so you keep that hand size up, which is really important. But the big thing on this card, which I think didn't really click completely for me in the initial review, was the fact that every time we play it, we're going to get a puppet token in our EX area. So the important thing isn't the fact that we have the puppets, because the puppets are combo enablers in a way. But one of the big things that is really cool about this is that if we start, once we see 1 Flower Doll, we end up usually playing like 2 to 3 times after that as well, just to clear up the board and getting hand advantage back without losing, or removing something off the board without losing hand advantage, essentially. So our King Elephant and Silverbolt will still have the hand to pop off. But what's so cool is that we're building like 2 to 3 puppets in our EX zone every game, which means Cassiopeia will deal a lot more damage. So we'll have a lot more control on our turn 5s and 6 and so forth, because we'll have the extra cards in our EX zone to add extra damage to Cassiopeia coming into play, meaning we can remove really big standing followers. Or if our opponent goes very wide on 5, we'll usually have a couple extra cards in our EX zone, meaning we're probably dealing anywhere from 7 to 9 damage to the board, split any way we want when Cassiopeia comes down, which is the really great part, I think, of playing Flower Doll. It's a very strong control tool. It doesn't seem that way initially, because you're just like, you get a 1/1 puppet, what does that really do? But the fact that you get once you see 1 Flower Doll, you get to cycle it over and over again and build extra puppets into your EX zone, leading into that turn 5, 6, or 7 Cassiopeia turn to remove huge boards or huge followers, is the part that is really surprisingly powerful for this deck. Obviously, we need more bounce tools for different things. Marvelous Sunday is just a good one that also heals you too. We need that sometimes. My only disappointment here is that I can't run any carrots to occasionally race Marvelous Sunday on 2 or 3 to clear up the board. In future iterations, that might happen. That might be what happens with Silent Suzuka. We might cut Silent Suzuka, play some of the Ice and Flash instead, so we can play a couple carrots here or there or something, or 1 carrot at least. So we have the option to go either way, though that makes the Evo deck kind of awkward. It's just something to consider for the future. Still, Marvelous Sunday is a very powerful tempo tool in the sense that we get a heal, so we don't just die to 3 Fortes to the face, essentially. And it's still a really good card to enable a lot of our bounce targets like Elfchild May, Harvest Festival, and things like that. Or even Crystal Tia to build an extra follower. Silent Suzuka, I'm not the biggest fan of this card right now. It's still very powerful. The one bad thing about this card always is it just loses to Snipe, and I think right now in this meta, Snipe will be a very popular 1-drop tool to remove things, as we saw in Havencraft, and I think even in I think it was Abyss or something as well. A lot of decks now have these 1-drop spells that also happen to do 2 damage to something as one of the options of it being played. So that means Silent Suzuka is a card that you have to watch out for, and making sure your opponent doesn't really have anything open to play. But it's still a really good tempo card that just like sets our opponent back, lets us get rid of a big follower while pushing some damage, especially after a turn where our opponent like uses their entire resources to clear our board and they leave like 1 threat on the board. We can Silent Suzuka top deck it, swing in for 5, get some extra damage in. That way, top decking a card too, especially a card something like Bellringer Angel that they really don't want to top deck, again, because their hand quality is just not good enough when you make those reads. Silent Suzuka then is a very powerful card. I'm still on the fence about the card. It's just a solid card in general, depending on your game plan. Like, it's not the worst to be playing, but I'm not 100% sold on this card yet in the deck, though it's still very powerful. Like I talked about earlier, Cassiopeia is such a wild card for this deck, mostly because of the EX generation and the fact that we're no longer really playing for a pressure our opponent with early damage to lead into a turn 6 or 7 King Elephant / Silverbolt turn. Now we can naturally just play to the board what we want, still keep a decent hand size up, and Cassiopeia getting that extra damage from the dolls is going to be really, really big. It's going to create huge swings on your turns 5, 6, and 7 when playing Cassiopeia. King Elephant, it's still such a good card. I mean, what can we say? It's like we hit turns 9 and 10, like this card will just end the game for our opponent there. One of the big things too, since we do play one of the Evo, once again, we're going to get a doubling of cards in our hand, giving it extra power and extra health. So like I said, Flower Doll, the fact that it can keep coming back over and over again into our hand on the Evo side of the follower is really big. Keep our hand size up for the turn 6 and onward elephant turns. Whenever our opponent is just doesn't have a ward up and they're floating nothing, you know, turn 6 slam King Elephant. This is usually swinging in for like 6 to 7 damage, and then they have now a 6/6 or 7/7 on board that they have to deal with. And even then, sometimes it gets even bigger because if we've already built a board that's pressuring our opponent, which means we can swing in with a couple followers that we have left over, maybe a Tia here, an Elf Child Maid there, and a Crystal Lily here. These like weak followers that only swing in for like 1 to 2 damage suddenly are now coming in for damage and bouncing back to our hand to create even bigger King Elephant. So some turns, even on 6, you might be swinging in for even 9 damage, which is a possibility at times, which means King Elephant is still a crazy threat. Finally, we still have Silverbolt to close out the game. I think Silverbolt this meta is not going to be as powerful as it was last meta as an alternative win condition because of that one angel card, I'm forgetting the name right now, that does block effect damage to leaders. But Silverbolt is still a very good card. Anytime they don't have it on the board and your turn 7, Silverbolt for game is really powerful. You're going to be, you know, dealing a lot of damage of 7 to 8 damage a turn on your Silverbolt turn on 7, which is a big chunk of damage. Your opponent always has to be worried about losing the game when they get into the later turns and let you have that huge hand size. But yeah, that's the deck itself. It's more of a mid-range game plan. We're playing a little bit more control leading up into our big swing turn with King Elephant and Silverbolt. I really enjoy the Flower Doll interaction with Cassiopeia. I think that's one of the big selling points for this deck. Everything else in this deck is just very strong, powerful tools that Force have already had for quite a while. So you kind of already, if you've been playing for a while, you already understand the advantages of a lot of these cards that are already in the Force list. But outside of that, guys, you know, take this deck to locals. Let me know how it goes for you. Let me know if you guys actually like Silent Suzuka or not. I'm always on the fence for this card. I think it's a very awkward card sometimes. It can get the job done, but other times it just like flounders and loses to like Angelic Snipe, which I think is going to be a card you'll see quite often in this meta because I feel like there are a lot of 2 health followers that people want to remove. One of the ones being Fina here, which is a very powerful 2-drop that I think a lot of decks will consider playing in their list as well, which means, you know, Snipe will always have a target in this meta. All right, with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. We'll see you guys in the next video. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and all that. We'll see you guys later. Peace.